This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Lachandra La Baker. Well, you have a lot in the middle, but um, so you're a workforce optimization strategist, speaker, and author of Your Own Biggest Cheerleader. And
Yes.
welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you. I'm doing wonderfully well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. We've been on the air since 2016. We've done over 1,300 interviews, and live interviewing is our jam. So we're actually live.
I love it.
And one thing we would get some business out of the way. We do have a QR code up there for Podmatch. Podmatch is a service that matches guests with hosts. So if you're someone that wants to be on a podcast, you can check that out. If you're somebody who wants to start a podcast and you don't know how to get guests, scan that with your phone and you can check that out. The QR code allows you to just jump right to that website. But now that we've got that out of the way, a couple of questions before we get to the heart of your story. I ask every guest that's on the show is
Okay.
what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Oh gosh. The human spirit motivates me. I get so much pleasure and joy from hearing people's lived experiences, understanding the narratives that create who they are and how they show up every day. And so that's why I do what I do. I believe very much one of the slogans of our organization is being a conduit of connection. And I believe it's important for us to connect to each other in the truest possible way so that we can show up authentically and support each other showing up authentically as well. So that's why I do what I do. I really love that.
Well, I think it's always cool to talk to people who are creators or people who have vision or they're passionate about what they're doing and they've got an idea how they want to tell their story or
Yeah.
tell multiple stories. And
Yes.
that's why I like to talk to creative people because it's interesting because it's like a what we call it, a master class in humanity.
Yes. Yes. I
That's
love
why I
that.
try to create this safe space, this podcast. We try to do long form because everything today is like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. We
Yes.
try to allow something to breathe so people can get an idea what something is a little bit more longer form.
Yeah.
Um, so you've been on TEDx,
Yeah.
and you're I guess as a performer, you're a gold level, bronze quill award winner
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
in the Columbus Future 50 of Leaders. So you've gotten your accolades. And what made you feel like you have a permission structure to do what you're doing? Because some people have ideas and they keep them
Mhm.
inside or they keep them in their head. What made you feel like you could actually bring your ideas to the world?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a wonderful question. And I would say it ties back to my lineage, right? My grandmother, and for you to understand who I am, you got to understand who she was. My grandmother, Millie Cooper, was born in 1914 in Port Royal, South Carolina. And for those who don't know a lot about the transatlantic slave trade in American history, that was a major port where a lot of enslaved Africans would come in. And so my grandmother's life, as you can imagine, started in the post-Reconstruction era, but it was incredibly hard. It was still very much the Jim Crow South. And when
Mm,
she grew up, she could only actually go to school until the third grade. And she was out in the cotton fields. And she worked really, really hard in those situations. And one of the things that really shaped her is the unfortunate loss of her mother. She was orphaned at 3 years old because her mother was murdered by the KKK, which is
oh
the Ku
wow,
Klux Klan in the
yeah.
South. And so my grandmother was raised by distant relatives. And so I can't even imagine growing up without my mother and have my mother taken away in such a harsh, horrible way. And so my grandmother really kind of reeled a little bit, because, even though relatives are raising her, they didn't raise her like her mother would have raised
Yeah.
her. And so there was a lot of just trauma that was never really taken care of. And so my grandmother left that house at 15, got married to an abusive man, and
Mhm.
unfortunately went through a lot of things. And there was all those things that you don't even really talk about, because even in the Black community for the South, there's a lot of things like you don't tell your business to the streets. And
Yeah.
so my grandmother suffered in silence a lot. And so when she had children, and my mom was a second set of children that my grandmother had, one of the things that was so important to my grandmother is that we all get education. And my mother was the first person in our family to go to college. And she made it possible for me and my sister to go to college and for my kids to go to college. And so one of the things my grandma instilled in me so much as a young person is she said, get your education. Because once you get your education, no one can take that from you.
We can stop you. Yeah.
No one
Well, I
can
think
stop you.
but it's like, yeah, a lot of times, like the culture, people suppress things. They think you got to suck it up, especially the older generations.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. You don't tell your business, like you said, to the streets. But
Yeah.
in order for you to actually heal, to ever to move forward, you
Yes.
have to be able to address like what the Victorians called like the looking glass self, like the mirror self.
That's right. That's
And if you
exactly right.
don't handle that and you don't deal with all the issues in the microcosm and within your family or your family
Yeah.
history, plus the macrocosm, the social stresses of what's going on outside of you,
That's
it's
right.
very stressful, and if you people today is like, oh, I only focus on STEM, right? They don't want to know anything about history,
Yes.
African American history. They don't want to know art history. They don't want to understand sociology, psychology.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, all I have to do is know the calculus and the math." And that's fine. I'm a software guy, but I'm a
Mhm.
musician and a
Yeah.
podcaster. I think the arts are super important
Very important.
to in history. As a political science
Absolutely.
major, and it seems like today, with ethics and stuff, we are not. We are like reliving the errors of the 1930s.
That's right. That's
Like
right.
nationalism is back on the rise.
Yes.
This idea of a rules-based order, oh, it's out the window because we have all these tech bros saying we can be disruptors, and
That's
it's
right.
inconvenient to have morality. It's inconvenient to have privacy law. It's
That.
inconvenient to have, ownership of your patent. They
That's
think
right.
that because they have a tool that can break all those things, that they should be allowed to do it.
That's exactly right. I mean, you've said so many things, and I want to break down so many things you said. You said about being a mirror, the looking glass, and I think it's so interesting because one of the things I tell people a lot in life is sometimes your life is a mirror where it reflects other people's lives, and sometimes it's a window where you're looking beyond where you are into the future where you want to get to. And I feel like so many of us are both of those. We can be sometimes we're a mirror and sometimes we're a window, and
Yeah.
depending on how we show up in life and who we're showing up for, we are either that reflection or that vision. And that's what's super important to me about sharing stories and about being true and having an authentic narrative, because people need to be able to either see themselves or see a future that's bigger than them that they can actually reach for. And that's what my grandma created for us. Even though her world was so limited, she wanted
Mhm.
us to believe that ours
Right
was
to
an
it.
infinite, was absolute infinite. And I'll tell you, that's how I raised my kids. My youngest kid will be 24 years old in a couple weeks. And one of the things I tell him all the time, he's a filmmaker. Talk about digging into the arts.
Yeah.
And the filmmaking that he does is independent film, real story film that tells people's real stories. I'm a big Marvel fan, so he'll be like, Mom, you can still go to the theater to watch Marvel, but I'm not gonna make those. I said, that's fine. You don't have to make those you know but his stuff is so real and so true, and it's
Yeah.
about really seeing people for who they are. And so I'm so proud that I have that lineage before me, and then I'll have the ancestry that will continue after me, that they understand the truth about narrative storytelling and showing up people in their real beautiful, sometimes very messy selves.
I think it's real important for people to dig in, artists and creative people, we dig into our vulnerabilities. That's our secret sauce.
That's right.
And everybody, can do that because everybody tells a story, whether they're a filmmaker or they're a painter or a
That's
musician
right.
or an author. It's just
That's
like
right.
those people say, "Well, I don't tell stories." Every day you're on the planet, you're telling a story to somebody, unless you're
Every
living by
day.
yourself. You
That's
never talk to
exactly right.
another human being.
That's right. And people don't see themselves as just being inherently creative. Everybody's creative. Every decision, we make thousands upon thousands of decisions every day, whether we hit snooze or we wake up, whether we turn left or we turn right. And each one of those is creating the next piece of your journey, whether you see it as that or not. Every conversation you have with somebody is creating a new narrative, a new journey. It's sharing your beliefs, your perspectives. Like all of that is creation. Even if you never create what you call consider art or create life as being a parent, you're
Mhm.
creating every day. And if you see yourself inherently as a creator, then you believe anything that you create can bring beauty to this world, can bring peace and healing to this world. You mentioned healing earlier in our conversation. It is so important for us to heal as fully developed human beings, knowing that we will make mistakes. And that's part of even when I think when you show up authentically, whether you're showing up at work, showing up for your family, showing up in your community, however you're showing up, you being able to authentically bring your best self to the work, to the idea, to the experience is so incredibly important. And that's what I fight for every day, to give people that belief in that I'm okay just as I am, but I can also be growing. And the two can be at the same very much at the same time. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can live
Yeah.
authentically in both of those spaces.
Yeah, there's a spectrum. It's like a lot of people always want to be like, "Oh, I'm this or I'm only this, I'm only that." And
Right.
really, like, every artist I was talking to an artist yesterday, a musician, but they were a painter, they
Yes.
were a writer, and they
Yeah.
did do some film, but like their primary thing is, or they're a musician. But everybody wears multiple hats, and then we're kind of told to make choices. We're told to be in a box.
That's right.
And
That's
it's
right.
like your book, Your Own Biggest Cheerleader, is like you have to love yourself. You have to promote yourself before you can promote anybody else.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you have to understand yourself and love yourself, the good, bad, or the indifferent. I tell people all the time, it's like, it's not that I don't know all the things, because I'm a very idiosyncratic person, right? My
Mhm.
kids sometimes do roast me. That one of my last birthdays, they roasted me about all the crazy, quirky stuff that I do. And it made me laugh so hard because I said, thank you for actually seeing me, because I'm quirky. I'm a
Yeah,
quirky person. I have weird taste that people be like, what? How can you like
yeah,
both of those things at the same time? Because I can't. And so I think that's so cool. I love that my brain is neurodiverse. I
yeah,
have ADHD
neurodivergent.
plus bipolar 2, and I'm working through that every single day. And sometimes I make myself laugh, and sometimes I annoy the crap out of myself. And I'm like, but I love me, 100% of me, because I'm unique.
Well, the thing is like, the world, a lot of business leaders say they want creative people,
Yes,
and then they go put them in a box.
that's
And
right.
they don't realize like the neurodivergent person might not be able to work within the box. Maybe
That's
they don't
exactly
work like in an office. They can't work within that cubicle,
that's
but
right.
then they want that creative person that can't really live that way to somehow conform to a micromanager. And
Exactly.
that's never going to work. And it's like, and then they tell you like, oh, they want it, but then they don't really want it because to me, actions speak louder than words. If you tell me you want it, but then everything you do doesn't allow it,
That's right.
then you don't want
That's
it.
right. That's right. It's the antithesis of what you're saying. And something I believe in, and one of my good girlfriends and I, we talk about this a lot, is around co-creation of the experience that you want. And I think a lot of workplaces don't even think about that. They think, oh, we got to have all this buttoned up and done, and we tell people what to do, and they just come in and they exist in this environment. When I'm like, actually, that's not it at all. What you want to do is co-create the environment. Obviously, as a business, you grow to make money, right? You grow to get customers, you grow to deliver a product and service that you think the world needs to benefit from. But you're also inviting people in to be a part of that process. Those people with, again, the lived experience, the different belief systems, the different value systems. And you're asking them to believe in the thing that you want them to believe in, but you also have to believe in them. So there has to be a co creation in that experience where you just think, I'm the boss, so I just know everything. There's no way you can possibly know
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Your perspective is limited on what you lived. So the best way to have the best, most well-rounded, robust, experience is to bring other people in to help co-create what that looks like. And people don't do that nearly enough. They think they have to have all the answers, and oftentimes the answers they have are wrong.
yeah. Because I worked in corporate America for a long time, and now I'm working with a smaller kind of startup mentality, and I like it a lot better because I can wear a lot of hats,
Yes.
and I'm allowed to kind of do whatever is needed, and I can be whatever I want to be. And
Yes.
and you can be passionate, and you can work toward this goal, but I'm respected. It's like when you're in a fusion jazz band. If the drummer
Yes.
goes off, the rest of the players respect that. The saxophone
Right.
player goes off, but then they come back and they might go back to the melody, but then they go off and do a little discordance and they come back. But everybody is appreciated for what they can do. And there's no
Absolutely.
real one guy. Even Miles Davis is like, he's got Herbie Hancock, he's got Coltrane, he's got all these guys, all these brilliant people around him. It's like he's not just the only one.
That's
And he's
right.
he's letting everybody kind of like you let the bass player play the bass, right? Like you might have had
Right.
an idea, but if he wants to go somewhere else, you're not a
Yes.
bass player, you're a sax player, right? So maybe you
Exactly.
came up with an idea, but he's actually better at it because that's what he knows how to do. And I
Yes.
feel sometimes these executives come in and they act like, they act like it's like, oh, I'm like Edison. I'm like Tesla, Nikola. It's like, and they've got all these people they never credit. And
Right.
then they take and everybody thinks they're like, oh, this one man is the most important person in the whole world, and all these engineers and architects are the ones that actually did it.
Yes.
You don't even know who they are.
And you don't even know who they are. And what you just said is so powerful because it's something that I personally experienced in that corporate space, but I'm trying to actively help people not do. I worked for 3 bosses in a row, which is so fascinating because it's a pattern, right? So I'm always looking for patterns. I don't think one-offs are always a thing, but I look for a pattern. And when we first started working together, we were all peers. And so as we were all successful together, we were growing together and it was great. But when there's a dynamic of the power shifted and they became my supervisors, then my success looked like showing up their inadequacies. And so at that
Mhm.
point, then the ego was, oh, you can't be better than me. Like I have to shine above you. And it became this thing where it became contentious. And instead of them saying, I got a great team and this person is smarter than me and better than me on this thing, they started trying to sabotage.
Yeah, I hate
And
that.
it destroyed the whole team. And I was like, why are we doing this? Why can't we be in collaboration with each other? We don't have to be in competition with each other. It's like you just said, Miles Davis, hands down, probably one of the best jazz musicians ever, but he knew that he could collaborate. And I remember a funny story about Herbie Hancock talking about, playing the wrong note sometimes and was feeling like he messed up and then Miles just flowed with it. And I'm like, that's what I think is the mark of a true leader is like, you're not trying to control people. You're trying to help them get to that best possible version of themselves. And that might mean you just moving out of the way,
Yeah,
right? To get them to
yeah.
do that. And so I love that actual story that you brought in because it means so much to me when you think about what true leadership is. You don't have to be fearful. You don't have to let your ego do the talking. You can see somebody else shining and it doesn't dim your light at all.
I think what happens is if you're a really good leader, you know what you don't know,
Right.
and you allow your subject matter experts to shine, and you don't try to take over and
That's right.
micromanage.
That's
And I
right.
really think there's a lot of problems in the current structure of these disruptors,
Yes.
right? These disruptors just think they can break things,
That's right.
and it might work sometimes,
Right.
but a lot of times it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But they want to take the one time it worked and then run it to the ground.
Yes.
And then they like to run people to the ground. I mean, there's a thing in Silicon Valley where people think working 160 hours is what you should make people do. And, anybody who's a musician or an artist knows there's diminishing returns.
That's exactly right.
Like if
That's
I'm in the
exactly right.
studio and I do 100 takes, by the time I get to take 101, I'm probably wrecking the song.
That's
Like,
right. That's right. Because there's so many things to talk about that, man. Oh my goodness, you are hitting on so many things. Like my brain is going a mile a minute because you've hit on so many things that I think are so important for us to bring up. It's that point of, especially when it comes to creative people, you need rest and rejuvenation to continue to be creative. And that's even in any space, whether that's, you truly doing the arts or you're working for tech and disruption, you're working in business and accounting and finance or pharmaceuticals or whatever it is, you still need to regenerate. That's just science of the body. You think about, if you're super tired, if you're hangry, if you're frustrated, irritated, if you're in pain, you're not going to be your best self.
yeah,
You're not going to give your best creativity. You're not going to be able to do 100%. You might do 50% at best, at best. And that's what I think about even with multitasking. People are like, oh, you must be able to multitask all the time. At what cost? Do you
yeah.
want me to do things
Doing
at a
everything
C
poorly.
level all the time? I mean, right.
Yeah, you're doing
You
everything
want
at
it
like
to work.
5% and you did like, how many tasks to equal 100% of tasks. Wouldn't
That's
have
right.
been better if you actually did something at 95% and you actually
Exactly.
got that instead of doing all these things and then hitting them at a 5 and then you have to go back and fix it.
And to go back and fix it. And that's so funny you say that because I tell people all the time, if you're preemptive and you do the work ahead of time, it's a lot smoother to go along. It's much harder to get so far down the line and then have to go back and undo all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
That way, even more time and money. And
Yeah,
and
that's
that
why
we
we
already
do it
know.
like that's why we do an agile or iterative development.
That's
Well,
right.
we used to do this idea called waterfall. And
Hmm.
waterfall, everything had to align. It's
That's
kind
right.
of what we used to do with mainframes because I'm
Yep.
back. I'm from the 70s. I used to work on mainframes, but
Yeah.
they required these like 100-page documents, and
Yep.
everything had to be right. If anything
Yep.
was wrong, it was wrecked. And
That's
with
right.
iterative development, we can have no micro errors, and we iteratively fix them. It's
That's
like
right.
what you see on your cell phone every day. You see these updates happening
Yes.
because what we knew yesterday, we know something different today,
That's
and we
exactly right.
continually send updates because we fix it. And so
Yes.
it's like it's a living piece of software that continually updates with what we know and what
Yes.
we learn. And you can
Yes.
live like that, or you could choose not to live like that.
Well, that's exactly right, and it's so interesting. We're mixing tech and humanity because I think about this all the time. We do think about tech being created in iterative stages, but we don't think about our human growth and human, evolving is in iterative stages, right? There's so many times people go, "Well, I just wish it was the way it was," or go back to when these things happened before. Well, if you go back to anything in your mind, it might be better for you, but is it better for everyone?
Yeah.
I was teasing my mom the other day because I'll be 53 years old this year, and I'm very proud of that, very happy. I feel like a vintage wine, getting better with time. But one of the things I tell my mom, I was like, 40 years ago, yeah, the world felt better to me because I was 13 years old. I didn't have any bills. All I had to do was worry about my Saturday morning cartoons and my homework. Of course, the world was easier and better. But now, as a 53-year-old with children and a husband in the real world I'm working in, yeah, things are more difficult. So I have to act differently now at 53 than I did at 13. I certainly hope I'm a much different person. But I think in a lot of time, in a bigger sense of things, people don't look at that growth as, yeah, I'm not the same person I was. No, we're not the same organization we were. No, we're not the same country we were. We have to grow and iterate with where we are right now and stop trying to push everything to back where it
Well,
was.
yeah, it's kinda like the MAGA, because like, they then we get into this idea, but this idea of resentment and say, "Well, okay, going back to the 1700
Yeah.
is that's a better look, right? Going back to
Yeah.
1952, that's a
Yeah.
better look." Well, maybe
Yeah.
for this social group it is,
Right. But
but
not for
for
everybody.
not for everybody, and this whole the whole thing with I think they did a study one time in economics, I was reading something, that the idea like this, like racism and discrimination actually affects
Mhm.
GDP. And this
Yes.
like this economist went and checked it, right? And said like it's costing you like billions of dollars in GDP, but you think
Yeah.
that it is actually not. You think that if you go and get rid of DEI, that your
Right.
GDP is going to go up. It
Yeah.
actually going down.
It's the opposite. That's exactly right.
But
That's exactly
if,
right.
like, if you have a filter and you just think, well, equity and inclusion that hurts me,
Right.
so that can't be good. Right.
Yes.
So there's this frame that they're putting on that somehow if I do well, that hurts this guy over across the street.
Exactly.
How does
And it's a
that
false
like
narrative. It's an absolute false narrative. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I told people, take the initials out, DEI. But let's talk about break it down. What are you talking about? Diversity means differences, right? I tell people all the time, think about because I have twins and triplets in my family. They are both of sets are they look identical, but they have distinct differences, right? Even their behaviors, personalities, they're different. So it doesn't matter if you share literally the same DNA and the same traits. There's going to be differences about you. So you're going to meet people in different places where they are and talk to them about who they are and their lived experiences. That's diversity. People are making it such a nasty word, but it's the same thing as if I have a 17-year-old who wants a car, and I have a 3-year-old who says it's not fair you gave your 17-year-old son a car when he didn't get a car. I'm like, baby, you don't even know how to drive. You're 3 years old. I'm not going to give you the same thing. That's equality. I'm going to give you equity. When you get 17, I'm going to
yeah,
get you a car. But at 3, you got 14 years, baby. Hold on. Right. And so I think people just keep confusing those things like, oh, well, I need exactly the same thing that person got. No, you don't, because you're in a different place. You need what you need, and that's okay. But express your needs. Don't just be mad and saying you shouldn't have that because I don't have it. But do you actually need it? Right? Do
yeah.
you actually need it?
Well,
It
the
was
the thing
funny.
that's crazy to me because I went to Bowdoin back in '86,
Hmm.
and this like this like Reagan guy came up to me and told me I was like, there's 30 kids out of like 1,400 kids in the school, 30
Hmm.
African American kids, and
Hmm.
he came up to me out of nowhere and told me that 30 of us were preventing qualified, young
Wow.
Republicans from being there. He just
Mm.
walked up to me and told me that, and it's the same mindset I see going on today. It's like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, but what about like the 100% set aside that, since 1774, that Bowdoin was always just all American.
Right.
Wasn't any of us. Maybe a
Right.
couple abolitionists got a couple guys in.
Right.
There were some, but
Right.
not a lot.
Right.
It's like, so like how are 30 of us hurting like the other 1,370?
Right. That's exactly right. And to me, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think two things are at play there. Number one is entitlement, right? Like who is entitled to owning America? Who's entitled to owning jobs or land and those kind of things? And it's like, it's our birthright. Well, whose birthright? Because I was born in America as well, right? So if we say it's an American birthright, does that mean me too? But you say it's not me because I am of brown skin. Oh, I am of African American descent. But here's the funny part about that. I did my ancestry DNA. I did my 23 DNA, and I did my African DNA. I have both European and African
Well, yeah, a
ancestry.
lot of
And
us,
most
yeah.
people,
I
most
mean,
people who are here from
yeah,
the
that's what we have.
transatlantic
It's like
slave
I got a
trade,
German like slaveholder that gave me my name. They gave me my
exactly.
last. So the thing that's interesting to me is like they don't seem to understand the strength of our economy. Like during COVID, they
Hmm.
looked at the American economy, and we were doing better than any other country.
Yes,
And when they started to look at the sociologists and economics people, it was like the diversity of all of our immigrants.
that's right.
Because a lot of our startups, a lot of
Yeah,
our businesses are started by immigrants,
that's
not
right.
natural born Americans.
That's right.
And the reason we're on the cutting edge in science and culture is all these immigrants. And
Right.
then we're being told that immigrants are the weakness when you do
Yeah.
any logical study, any
Yeah.
scientific study, any
Yeah.
sociological scientist, like a political scientist, a sociologist, anybody
Yeah.
who does the work can prove that that's true.
Absolutely.
But I
Absolutely.
guess that's woke.
Right. Which again, it's such a ridiculous concept when you think about it. But for some reason, this irrationality is becoming the main zeitgeist of what we're doing right now in America. And I'll give you a great example what you're talking about as far as GDP and economy. I live in Columbus, Ohio right now. We are a hotbed, just like shortly 30 minutes from us is Springfield, Ohio, which right now is a spotlight because we have a large population of Haitian refugees who
Yeah.
have been living there and honestly contributing to the overall wellness of the whole city, economically wise, children wise, building wise, all the things. And so now they're at risk of losing their temporary status of protection, being sent back to a country that many of them fled because of their lives. Now they
Politicals,
are
yeah.
being forced politically to go back that may end up losing their lives. They don't know people there. But also, Springfield as a city will now go into decline. It
Yeah.
was one of those cities that was literally disappearing until the Haitian population went in, and now it's growing for the first time.
Yeah,
For the first time.
because of the industrial contraction because of like NAFTA
Yeah.
and the decision to move all of our production overseas and this keep all the actuaries and the software guys, we decided we were going to do that. That
Yes.
the work was going to get done outside the US. And
Yes.
it had nothing to do with immigrants.
No.
That had
No,
to
not at
do
all.
with the boardroom and the bean counters deciding that it cost too much to make something in this factory. Could we make this percentage less profit? You could still be
Exactly.
profitable, but they didn't think it was profitable enough.
That's right.
So
That's right.
then they tell people it's this immigrant is the problem. This other is the problem. When the board made the decision,
Ooh, child, listen, man, you dropping some science right now. Listen, that is exactly right. And we are fighting at this very, very street level when it's Wall Street who is forcing these things, not the street itself. So it's so interesting that we are ended up thinking we got to battle each other for these things, and we're being created a narrative in our heads and being fed a whole bunch of stuff from people who don't want to relinquish power because their proximity to power and money is so powerful that they want us battling each other instead of looking at who is actually the one instigating all of this. And that
yeah,
is what is fundamentally our
private
problem.
equity buys a company, and
Yeah.
then divides it up and forces loans on them, and it takes a profitable company and turns it into a disaster, into a bankruptcy, and then eats the parts.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
that's very destructive capitalism to me.
It
And if you
is.
look at I don't think it really enhances your GDP. I think it
No,
enhances like a transfer of wealth to the top, 5%.
absolutely.
It makes a lot of inequity,
That's exactly
which,
right.
sociologically and politically, do you wanna have like a French Revolution? Like, if
Right.
you get to a certain critical mass,
Right.
people would say, I can't do what the soldiers from World War II when they came back and they were able to go to college and buy a house and buy a
Right.
boat and do and
Right.
send their kid to school. And now if
Yeah.
they can't even they can't with 3 or 4 jobs, they still can't keep the house
That's exactly right.
and they can't pay
That's
for their
exactly
health
right.
care.
That's
How is
exactly
that
right.
gonna be sustainable?
And it's not. And it's so much that you say, because I think about the two populations that are really, really struggling. I think about the people who are elderly, retired, who are on a fixed income, with it, which means nothing that they're going to have is going to increase unless they go and get another job. So if you look at things around them increasing, the property values, even with levies that are being landed on their property tax, or property shifts changing, or inflation rates or whatever, they're going to struggle. We had a
Yeah,
whole series of older folks who, because their properties got reevaluated, their taxes went up and their mortgage went up. They couldn't afford it. So
yeah,
even though they owned their home, they were now at a risk of foreclosure because they couldn't afford the
yeah, and the
tax
private
payment.
equity buy it up and turn it into a,
Wow.
like, like one of those, hotel things.
Yes,
Yeah, they kinda they're basically gonna push the middle class down a level,
that's right.
increase their level, and make
That's right.
people who are homeowners into renters,
That's right.
which is not positive for the economy
It is not
overall.
positive for the economy overall. It's funny. I'm on the board of an organization here in Columbus called the Women's Fund of Central Ohio, and we advocate for women in all ways, shapes, forms, and girls being able to give their fair opportunities. But one of the things we did this past year is we funded a research project, and we call Making Women Wealthy and Free. And one of the things we talked about is, like, what is that number? What is that magic number that a woman would need every month that would change the dynamic of their life and livelihoods? And you would think it's what, millions of dollars? No, it was 500 extra dollars a month.
Mhm,
It
not a
would
lot.
give them enough cushion that if an emergency situation happened, they could pay for it, like if something happened to their car, if they had a childcare expense, if they just wanted to buy their kids pizza on a Friday night because they just wanted to, like, having that money gave them opportunity and gave them flexibility where they don't have it now. So it's like, think just $500. That is such a minuscule amount that could change people's lives. So people think it's just these huge things. It's not a lot. If we actually just focused on how can we actually help these people take a leg up? How do we help them not just get fish that day to eat, but they learn how to fish, or even
Yeah,
better yet, buy the pond so they can have their own fish and supply? Like we're doing these short-sighted little things instead of thinking, what's the long game? How do
yeah,
we
agreed.
actually keep the long game?
But even, like, if you think about, like, something that's real critical for human life is healthcare, and
Yes.
we've decided to make healthcare for profit. If you
Yeah.
look at the trajectory of it, eventually the healthcare premiums, even if you're in the workplace, getting it
Yes.
through your job, will
Yes.
exceed the what they make the employee pay, will
That's
exceed
right.
what they're capable of actually handling,
That's
and
right.
it will be untenable.
It will be.
So I don't understand how people think that that's productive, unless,
Right.
like, they think the AI is gonna take everybody's job, and then who's gonna buy anything if AI is doing all the work?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I believe in Skynet very much. I love the Terminator. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think we're going to have that kind of takeover. But I think what people will use it as an excuse not to actually take care of the human side of humanity, right? And I think it's so important. One of the things you said to me, we just said just now, really resonates with me. One of the things about me and my family is my husband is a cancer survivor.
Mm,
He's been battling cancer for 10 years. When we first started our cancer journey, I was still in the corporate space and working in a corporate environment. My deductibles, at the time working in corporate spaces were probably, we had a family of four, were probably about, I'd say about $500 to $600 a month. Plus we had a $6,000 family deductible that we had to
Mhm.
get through. That doesn't seem like a lot to some people. Okay, that's fine. And we got through some things. But when I became a business owner, I had to get on the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
That then tripled for me alone. My alone without my family is $1,300 a month for a
Yeah.
premium,
It's crazy.
and my deductible was $8,000 by myself.
Yeah.
By
Yeah, I mean,
myself,
the premiums don't make any sense to me.
no
What's
sense.
going on is like
Yeah.
because if you go to the EU and you
Hmm.
look, like in the Nordic countries,
Yep.
right, and even in some of the Japanese and Eastern companies, even China, like they're more socialist countries.
Yep.
Like it's more productive to make sure your worker is doesn't get sick
Yes.
than to have a system where it's like people don't seem to understand. If you have to pay 30% of your income or 40% of your income for healthcare, how
Yes.
can you put money into retirement? How can you
You
put
can't.
money to buy education for your kids?
You can't.
How can you go on vacation?
That's right.
So if you start looking at the economy, it's like, oh, how come all these vacation spots have nobody can come anymore? How come
Because
people
they
can't buy boats
understand.
and snowmobiles and all these other things? If
That's
all the
right.
money's going to one sector,
That's right.
then it's getting
Yeah.
locked in that sector.
That's exactly right. I'll give you a great for example. I have a young mentee that I've been working with. She recently lost her job. She's only 29. She'll be 30 later in this year. But she had to cash out her 401k for survival. Like,
Yeah.
she has had the hardest time. The job market here is so rough, and she's a, African American woman, and she's having a really hard time getting corporations to defy what they say is a DEI hire,
Oh,
which, whew,
yeah.
don't get me started with that.
It's terrible,
And
yeah.
she's struggling. So now you're imagining her about to turn 30. Now she has to start all over again when it comes to retirement. But I understand, because she had to pay for what is life right now. She can't even think about 40 years in the future. She's like, right now, I got to survive. And so that's such an interesting concept that you're talking about, with retirement and giving stuff back to the economy and having the bandwidth and flexibility to do that. A lot of people don't have that anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
They
they
don't.
they they kind of basically, if you think about in America, people haven't got a pay raise for like 30 years
That's right.
for
That's
adjusted
right.
for inflation, except for the top end.
That's
So
right.
somehow, what's really crazy for me is like, how come all these people in the C-suite, all these like executive level, they're the ones that created all the wealth? Like
That's right.
they like the workers and the engineers and the people who did the work are
That's right.
getting the least amount of
Always.
and this is why a lot of people are starting to go into like, "Oh, I can get a 3D printer. I can
Right.
use this AI agent, and I can make my own company, and I can
That's
keep
exactly right.
patent this thing, and I get the money. And I'm
That's
not gonna
exactly
give
right.
my patent to this J Dow this big Dow Jones company, because what if
Right.
I give the patent to them, all the money goes to the top, and
Always
I
go to
don't
them.
get any commission, I don't get anything from it. So if you I talk to a lot of people who are engineers and techies, like,
Yeah.
"Why am I gonna build this and give it to this guy?
That's exactly
I'm gonna
right.
go and create a collective, and we're gonna build it ourselves."
That's exactly right. I love that you said that. I'm starting to see a lot more of the collectives coming together. I myself have joined with a several, small solopreneurs and said, hey, we're much better together. And why don't we all go tackle this thing together? And so I agree with you. These larger organizations are going to start losing all of their prime talent because they don't know how to treat people and they don't know how to share the wealth. And that's a part of it. I worked for some pharmaceutical company once where, our people who work in our distribution centers, they are the lifeblood of the organization, right? How they pick, pack, and ship and get things done on time to the right sources and the right clients is really important. But none of those people were a part of the profit sharing.
Yeah.
All of the only manager level and above got bonuses or management incentives on all of the work that those frontline people did. And you're talking about 90% of the people were working hard and didn't get a thing when the top 10% did.
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
why
like,
I left
how?
corporate America too, because I went to a smaller startup because now I get better bonuses, I get better profit sharing. When I went to a
Exactly.
smaller company, the smaller the company, the more equity you seem to get. The
That's
bigger the
right.
company, they like to talk, and they
That's
talk
right.
a good game,
That's right.
but when you look at it, it's like, "Look, show me the money."
That's exactly right.
I don't see the money.
That's right. that the money, or even like you saying, like if I wrote this, then give me the patent or give me a profit share on the patent, right?
Yeah,
Don't
give
just
me a
say, oh, well,
percentage.
you developed it under my company. It's just going to be about my company. Give them something too. What's the incentive?
That's like when you're talking about Marvel. Like there was a guy from Marvel, Todd McFarlane. He left. He was an artist. He was
Mhm.
doing Spider-Man. He redesigned Spider-Man. Created Venom and Carnage, and then he
Mhm.
couldn't get them to give him profit. So he went
Nope.
and created a whole new company called Image. And then Image, all the creative writers get to own a percentage. They get to own the toys. They
I
get to
love that.
own the movie. They get the rights.
I love
So
that.
Image became this new company. And if you notice, most of the new characters are not being created from the big companies. They're
Mm-mm.
coming from like Dark Horse and Image because
Yeah.
they allowed the creators to own their stuff. And
That's so beautiful.
nobody wants to give a new character if they can't own a percentage of the toys and the profit and the
Absolutely.
merchandising. Why would you do it?
Then why would you do it? Right? I mean, we see that all the time. And, and the arts are so good for showing us that, right? You go all the way back to the days of payola and these very restrictive record recording contracts. There was so much that happened that people went completely bankrupt with no ownership whatsoever because they got duped out of their creativity and out of their rights. And I
Mhm.
love the fact that in 2026, because we have so many very smart people in how to connect in different ways, you don't have to rely on that anymore. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you permission. You can start your own YouTube page today. You can do your own streaming today. You can create your own company with your collective today. And I think that democratizes being able to be a part of this capitalist, society without having all the restrictions. But then I still believe that people close to the power will still try to make sure that you're not exactly accelerating at that part, because there's still some gatekeepers out
Well,
there,
yeah, they're still
right?
gatekeeping. They're gatekeeping you like with the algorithms. Because
Yes.
they'll go talk to the people who own the algorithms. I won't mention them, but like what
Yes.
happens, like if you're the small startup, you're
Yeah,
coming out from you don't get the weight of the big guy, and they make sure you don't get the weight.
that's
And
right.
you can play, and if you notice with the SEO and everything, it changes so much now
Yeah,
that you
so
might
much.
think that you got it, and then it shifts, and then you gotta do it again. And so
That's right.
they're doing that to keep the little guy out.
That's right.
They're doing that so you really don't get your to me, I've always felt like I was pointing out this yesterday on a podcast. People need a digital bill of rights.
Yeah,
They need
I
to have
agree with
some
that.
rules because we're living in a world, right, where everything
Yeah,
was like, okay, if you wrote a book, there was a rule. There's
right,
copyrights. You wrote a movie, there, the physical stuff, the
right,
intellectual property. But once stuff went
right.
digital,
Yeah,
a lot of these rules don't apply.
that's right.
And so people are able to kind of take advantage of this market space
That's
in
right.
the ether because we haven't been smart enough to go and say we need a new digital bill of rights that says if you're on
Right,
the net that somebody can't take my social security, they can't take my HIPAA,
right,
they can't take my privacy, they can't take my patent, they can't just take it
right.
because the tools let them take it. The
That they
tools
do.
today just let people take it. It's hard to get any accountability.
That's right. And you're exactly right. And I think that it comes down to lobbying, right? It's the lobbyists, right? Because the politicians are not creating enough regulatory, legal abilities to protect the small guy. They're only protecting the big guys, right? And so that's why we don't have it, and we probably won't, because the profiteering from not having it is much richer for people who are politicians, not public servants, because there's a difference between those two things, and they care more about making the money and, again, keeping that proximity to power, so they don't want to let anybody else have the ability to do so.
Yeah, because if you go to like Australia, you go to EU, you see that the privacy rules are way tighter. In some
Absolutely.
Nordic countries, people own their own image.
That's right.
They own their facial image. They own their voice. And if
Yeah.
somebody on the net uses it, they have to pay.
And that's how it
And
should
so,
be.
and what we've been told, oh, that's anti-competitive for our advantage. It's like, no, no. That this lets them not get a certain level of profit when they're already making mega profit.
That's
So
right.
they've been
That's
conning
exactly right.
people saying we can't have these EU level rules because
Yeah,
we'll lose our competitive advantage. Well, you
that's right.
just sold the AI chips to a country in the Middle East. So what do
Yep.
you care about control of the tech? You
That's
just
exactly
sold
right.
them to some country candy, and they can just give it to anybody. So
Exactly.
you don't really care about that.
No,
So people need to really, I don't know if people read enough. They don't read papers. They don't
they
like
don't.
do critical thought, but people
No.
need to not just get it from some influencer.
That's right.
They need to get informed and don't take it from this like Joe Blow in the square yelling at the top of their lungs.
That's exactly right. You said a whole mouthful there when you talk about the fact that critical thinking is such a lost art form anymore. We are so apt to believe whatever the headline is that matches what our beliefs are, right? So it's the hypocrisy of it all where you say, I believe in this over here. But when it comes to this person who I don't like, well, I don't believe in that. Well, wait a minute. You either believe in something or you don't believe in it. It doesn't matter who says it or who does it. What is it? What is it? Right. And so we have this identity crisis. Well, we don't actually know what we believe, or we don't stand firm in what we believe. We sway and move with the wind, and that's part of the challenge. And that's
It's
why,
very
we are going to be at a deficit with how we think about workforce, how we think about economy and the shared wealth idea, because we can't get our bearings to say this is the line in the sand, and we're not going to cross that line. What are
well,
your
it's always
values?
interesting to me. It's like you get a worker that would have been in a union, then
Hmm.
aligning with the boss, thinking they're going to be the boss one day.
Right.
It's like so okay, you're a truck driver, you're in the Teamsters, you're aligning with a guy that's actually working with a guy that's going to make AI trucks, and then
Right.
you're not going to have a job.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
but you didn't think it out,
That's right. You're
and now
voting
you
against your own
now you're
interest.
now you're not driving a truck anymore.
That's right. And it's so funny that I think that comes from some people believing we are single issue people, right? You say, oh, well, I hate 99% of the things that he does, but the one thing I agree with that, so I'm going to vote for him for the one thing. I was like, well, there's no one thing. There's me being a middle-aged black woman from the South in America. I cannot be a one single issue person. I'm thinking about so many things, how I
Yeah.
show up, how I'm living my authentic self, how I'm, helping other people advocate for themselves. I can't think in one issue. So if I'm inviting people to share their narratives with me, sharing their experience with me, that means I have to also care about what they care about if I care about them as a person. So I can't be a single issue person. I got to think about how is this going to help the most people possible to open up and give them that freedom that I say that is in our Constitution, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life and liberty. Liberty is freedom. Where do I get to do that? Where is my pursuit of happiness? I can't pursue my happiness if you're putting all the barriers and blocks in my way to pursue it. So how do we do this? How do we
Yeah,
actually live out the values of our country and what we say?
it's very interesting. The people who talk about freedom are the people putting soldiers in the street.
I mean, I mean,
Because they always told us, oh, the UN's going to come in and take your guns away.
right.
But I think it's somebody else doing that.
It is somebody else, and somebody else creating a narrative that you see things with your own eyes and you're being gaslit in front of the whole world. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm seeing these things, but yeah, why are we not doing something about those? So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just
it's a big deal.
it's so fluid because
Yes,
they'll say it's almost like the parent that says, I'm alcoholic, but you should never take a drink.
exactly.
It's like,
Do as
okay,
I
okay,
say,
dad.
not as I
It's like,
do.
how's that work?
Right. That's
It's like
exactly right.
because
That's
that seems
exactly
to be
right.
what's going on. Is but that's pretty clear. But then it's gotten to like a cultish thing. It's like
Yes,
Jonestown. Everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid.
that's
It's
right.
like the lemon's going off the cliff. It's like I thought you believed in individualism and like self-preservation, but doesn't look like
It
it.
doesn't look like it. That's exactly right. And what you're saying is now affecting everything. It affects obviously the governmental things, but all of the business and the corporations, the economic impact of things, the people, how you're able to parent or have children or go to school or get an education. It's literally impacting everything. And then you wonder why we can't be further ahead than we are. Like, because we are literally putting barriers in our own way. Like we instead of us removing them, we just could put more and more. And you're like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because I mean, we're living in a world where alternative energy from a tech point of view, right?
Yes,
Solar has not been explored to the ultimate level that it could be,
that's
right?
right.
Solar can do a lot. It really
A whole
advanced
lot.
solar could almost replace everything we're doing with fossil fuel, but it's
Absolutely.
been like not allowed to happen. You
That's
know,
right.
geothermal wind energy in other places
Yep.
massively used.
Yep.
Fusion is on the
Yep.
edge of actually coming, and we
Yep.
still got people doubling down on fossil fuel,
That's right.
which
That's
is like,
exactly right.
why? And then when you look, well, there's a couple of people, maybe like 100 people,
Yep.
they're making all this money from that. And
Right.
then the benefit of, like, if you lower cost of energy with
Yep.
fusion combined with the other renewables, and
Yeah.
then energy becomes lower cost, then you can use that money for healthcare. You can use that money
Right.
for other things, for education. You could use things, and we could be advancing as a society at a higher level, like
That's right.
like a Star Trek Federation level where everybody
Yes.
gets educated, everybody has
Absolutely.
healthcare, everybody can be whatever they want to be,
Exactly.
like in science fiction stories.
That's
You
right.
allow people to self-actualize.
That's right.
Why
And
not?
share power. Shared
Yeah.
power. And people have a power and authority over themselves. Imagine that. What a novel concept.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of tech that could be used to make things more democratic, the
Absolutely.
democratization, and we've seen
Yes.
that in some, like, the in the music industry, like the DAW, the digital audio workstation, has allowed people to get out of the studio and the
Yep.
gate of the studio. Now people can just do that in their apartment in Bed-Stuy. You could have your Pro Tools and you could
Yep.
put something together and you could boom. You don't have to go to Olympic Studios. You don't have to go to Electric Lady. You don't
Nope.
have to go to those places. You could do it in your house.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that kind of tech can be across the board for everything.
Absolutely. 100%. And give people a livelihood, life and livelihood, generational wealth building for everyone, right? And again, the ownership, I can't go back to that enough. You mentioned that even from the top of our conversation, people owning their own abilities, their own rights, their own results of the impact of their work. That is something that will create a ripple effect in such a positive way. It actually will increase more money into the economy, because when you have more to be able to spend and be able to share, the more better the entire community is because of it. So this whole idea that we have to hoard our wealth and not share is just beyond me. It's
Yeah, because
beyond me.
if you hoard all that wealth, like actual development of ideas
Yeah,
doesn't come from hoarding.
it
It
does
comes
not.
from investing in those ideas. But if you just hoard trillions of dollars and it's
Yep.
kept out of the system,
Yep.
and you just in a couple of people, those people aren't the bright lights that you think they are. They're
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 absolutely not.
hoarders.
That they are.
And
They are.
hoarders don't, if you're a hoarder at the microcosm level, if you see a guy that's got newspapers and all this stuff in this house and it's all full, it doesn't look good, does
No, it does not.
it?
And it's cluttered. And it's like, how can you find anything? It'll take you more time to try to find something in a hoarder's house than if you had everything all stacked and organized in some way, right? So if you knew that, if I say, okay, Phantom, tell me where this is. If I don't know where it is and you have all this only you can tell me where it is, because
Yeah,
you know your system of categorizing. So I need to bring you in your perspective, and so I can learn.
yeah.
Otherwise, I won't know. I'll spend time spinning my wheels being like, I don't know where this is.
They're just keeping everything. It's like you got some of these guys, they're hoarding patents,
Yes.
hoarding technologies, pushing
Yep.
things down.
Yep.
That is not what capitalism is supposed to be about.
No, it's
Capitalism is
not.
supposed to be an open marketplace, but when you say it's a controlled system, just like a socialist or communist system,
That's
we're
right.
we're being told it's one thing, but you uncover there's a lot of stuff. It looks like this is like a controlled, managed economy.
Absolutely.
Why is
It
it? You
absolutely is.
tell me it's not, but it is.
Yeah, I know. And when you have a very large, player who has several of the family members on the Forbes billionaire list, yet they are one of the biggest purveyors of government welfare, because most of the people who work for them are on government assistance because
Yeah,
they're not
government
paying them
system. They're
enough.
not welfare queen. Like a welfare queen is like work for the Defense Department.
Right. I mean, there's some things. I mean, this is what we're talking about. And so people got to get really real with where we are and stop pretending like we're not seeing what we're seeing. We're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
So
think
how are we
somebody
gonna be
who's giving
different?
government cheese is hurting the economy compared to somebody who's building satellites and then destroying satellites and then taking it's
Correct.
like, okay, I spent a couple $1 billion putting these satellites up. Now I'm gonna take them all down and then take another set of taxpayer money to put another set up.
That's right.
It's like,
Or I'm
okay,
sending out rockets that explode as soon as they come off the launch pad that are billions of dollars. But you're
yeah, it's
worried
like,
about me and my $7 EBT card. What?
yeah, it's like, can I bought some milk and some cheese and some crackers?
Right.
And that's like destroying America. Because I
Correct.
bought milk, cheese, and crackers.
Like, make it make sense, but we're just
Yeah,
talking rational and logical, but
yeah,
whatever.
it's a rational thing. Like, isn't that what education is supposed to be about? Rational, thought.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's
But
exactly right.
I want to remind people of where I kind of I have a time crunch, but I would love to talk to you more. But
Yeah.
we've got your we got a QR code up for your website. So if people scan that, if people go to your website, what do they find there?
Yes, they'll find all of our services, what we do. We do a lot of workshops. We do leadership development classes. We're going to have some online classes that are going to come up later this year. And then you can also buy my book and listen to our podcast as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, I want to put your book up again. People can check that out. Use the QR code, and that's your own biggest cheerleader, and check that out. We do encourage people to click on the links of the guests that are on the show. All the links here that you see here for your LinkedIn and your website will be clickable. We've been on LinkedIn, YouTube, and we'll be on many more channels by the end of the day tomorrow. But thank
Love
you for
that.
being on the show.
Oh my gosh, I love this conversation so much. Thank you for your insights and all that you do to help people's voices get out there. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.